How you doing today?
Hello, Mrs. Dole. Good. How are you? Good to meet you.
Brian.
You from Statesville?
Yeah, WSIC Radio.
Great.
We have a weekly program on Saturdays.
How are you all? Where are you from?
Statesville.
You're also all together?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
We have a weekly program where we talk about politics and current events, and I'd like to have you on as a guest by phone before
Hogan's listening.
on it.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Before the election.
Okay.
But to start with, a couple of questions I'd like to ask you. Could you update anything for us on the conflict between Russia and Georgia?
No update other than to say that obviously this is an act of aggression. They have invaded a sovereign nation, and which we certainly deplore. And I think both NATO and of course our country is calling for a ceasefire and for an end of hostilities.
We've seen President Bush give us the largest deficit this year for 2009 that we've seen in our history. Congress just passed it where we can have a larger national debt next year, up to $10.6 trillion. Could you comment on that? Do you think our government's going in the wrong direction with us keeping on following into the footsteps of a larger and larger indebtedness?
Well, let me just say, first of all, that I'm a strong supporter of a line item veto, whether it's a Democratic president or a Republican president. I think people get a little bit mixed up when it comes to earmarks, because there are good earmarks, and then there's some that don't make any sense at all that get dropped into a conference report in the middle of the night, so to speak. It's not been vetted, it's not gone through the legislative process, and some very important issues have been earmarks that mean a lot to North Carolina. So you have to sort that out first. And obviously right now we are fighting on a couple of fronts, and they're necessities, but also there's excessive federal spending. And we've got to stop that. And I think the line item veto, or line item recession as they call it, where a president can strike out the excessive spending, send it back to the Congress for an up or down vote, is very important. And I've had legislation to that effect since I first entered the Senate. We've got a couple of people on the other side of the aisle who are very much opposed to a line item veto. So we've not been able to get that through, but we're going to continue to fight for it. I think that's the answer.
This past week we saw the rebel Republicans, staying in the Congress after it had adjourned, wanting an up or down vote on drilling offshore. What's your opinion on that, and what do you think we need to do to get this country more fixed on a stable gas policy?
Right. Well, first of all, we are about 58-60% dependent on foreign sources of oil. And that's like Chavez's Venezuela and Putin's Russia and Ahmadinejad's Iran, and that is totally unacceptable. We've got to become independent. Now, how do you do it? You put everything on the table. I like to describe it as putting everything, including the kitchen sink. And then you develop a comprehensive policy, energy policy, and you do it quickly. So I've called on the president to call a summit to try to do this. I think you have to look at it two ways. One is short term. How do we get the price of gasoline down short term? You can do it by taking about a third of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and selling it. And that would show the speculators we really mean business here, and it would bring down the price. In terms of, I've also called on the president to set up a task force on oil and gas market fraud. In other words, to have the Justice Department looking at whether there's manipulation of the market or whether there's any corruption. So that's short term. Drilling, I think the state has to make the decision, lift the moratorium, which would let the governor then decide. He can dot every T, dot every I and cross every T, and look carefully at whether this is in the interests of North Carolina. I personally feel that, if it's 50 miles offshore, and with the change in technologies just in the last few years where you can do it very strategically. For example, you can drill a hole about the size of a closet and reach out for 5 miles. And there are a number of other technological developments even beyond that. So it can be done, I think, in an environmentally safe way. And it would mean that 37.5% of the revenues would go to the state for the sale of that petroleum. And what would it mean? well, maybe beach renourishment, things of that sort, dredging that the coast needs. So put that on the table. Look at the Rocky Mountain area where apparently with the development of technology there, and this would be oil shale. By extracting the oil shale, we would have 3 times the reserves of Saudi Arabia, which is amazing. So, there are many different ways. Conserve energy, you bet. But we need a crash course in conserving in this country. We really do. And certainly alternative sources of energy. So go after it all in a comprehensive package. And I think this has really got the attention of people now. We have a good chance of coming up with a comprehensive policy.
We need one more. We need to get around that.
I've got one other question for you. Seymour Hersh, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, has reported, and it's been covered in MSNBC, that Dick Cheney proposed a Gulf of Tonkin-type situation to lure a war with Iran. And
I know nothing about that. I don't think that's the situation at all.
Okay. What is your opinion on attacking Iran unprovoked? Would you advocate that? Would you support that?
We have to make certain that Iran does not develop the means to kill us with the nuclear weapon. And I think that in terms of whether or not there would ever be military action, that would have to be absolutely a last resort. I think it would cause an unbelievable situation in the Middle East, but I don't think you can just say rule it out forever. I mean, you leave every option on the table when you're trying to negotiate with the country in any way, even in a very informal way where you don't have your president sitting down with Ahmadinejad, but you do have conversations at lower levels perhaps, and you don't take anything off the table.
Thank you all.
Hey, great. Thank you for joining us.
You
today.
bet. Thank you all.
We'll
have a good
with
evening
you.
now.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Hi there. How you doing?
All right. Good to see you.
Hey, man. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Is the audio feed okay?
Fine, yeah. Okay.